So without further ado, I'm excited to introduce you to our community expert for today. This is Courtney Rodriguez, and she is a certified lactation educator, certified postpartum doula, and certified infant and family sleep specialist. And she is also the owner of Nurture My Nest, which she will talk more about with us today. Courtney, it's all you.
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you guys all for being here. My name is Courtney Rodriguez. I am a postpartum doula first and foremost. So I visit families in home as soon as they get home from the hospital or have a home birth. Sometimes through the first 6 months, typically through the first 8 to 12 weeks. And I help with all kinds of things that just help families integrate to this newest family member. So we talk about breastfeeding, sleep, newborn care. I also help with practical things like meal prep, errands, just helping around the house, things like that. In addition to that, I offer virtual postpartum doula services for folks that just maybe don't need somebody in home, but have a lot of questions that they don't want to ask their pediatrician, but also don't want to ask ChatGPT. And so we just work together one-on-one virtually. And then I offer virtual sleep consultations. And I approach sleep as a doula first and foremost, which means that my goal is to meet you where you are, craft a plan together that feels good for your family around sleep, and then you and your partner implement that plan, and I support you virtually while you do that to make tweaks to the plan, say this is working, this is not. We had a great night last night, which is my favorite thing to hear from families, and just support you for a plan that works, customized for your family, and is going to work for your family, because I really believe that there is no such thing as one size fits all sleep training. There's a lot of stuff out there on Instagram and books and plans that you can buy and spend a lot of money on. But ultimately, you need to find something that you feel confident about and are able to implement with consistency, to make that work for your family. Um, so I have a short presentation for you guys, but I would like to make sure we save enough time for any questions that you might have about sleep. So you can type those in the chat, or feel free, at the end, we'll make time for questions. And Mary, you're welcome to interrupt me if you see questions come through before I do.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. And I'm going to share. Uh, let's see. Okay. Why am I think I have to let it. It's not letting me share my screen for some reason.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I did make you the co-host, so let's see. Courtney, do you have the option to screen share, or is that not even showing up?
I see it. It's just saying. Oh, hold on one second. I think I can fix it on my end.
Okay, cool.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay. Okay, let me see if this works. There we go. Oh, hold on one second. There. It made me reopen everything.
Of course.
Okay, I think we should be good now.
Yeah, looks
Okay,
like we can see it.
awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
So yeah, I kind of touched on this a little bit, but my truths about infant sleep really come from my background as a doula, which is supporting families in the space that they are in and making sure that we find something that works for their family. With sleep, I think there tends to be a lot of chatting with sisters, aunts, cousins, friends at the playground, people you don't know very well, and they all want to tell you about what worked for them in regards to sleep. And that's not always going to work for your family. So sleep training is not one size fits all. It will fail if you're not able to be confident and consistent about it. If you choose to buy a one size fits all sleep plan on Instagram, it's probably going to tell you that you have to follow all of the steps. Um, you don't. You can customize that to something that works for you. You can take what works, you can leave what doesn't. You can read 5 or 6 different books and craft your own sleep plan. And this is kind of what I help families do because they don't want to read 5 or 6 different books. Um, you can't force a baby to sleep, but you can set the stage for a healthy night's sleep. So I'm going to go over that a little bit and talk about implementing a bedtime routine and just kind of how to set the stage for sleep. And what your baby needs most is happy, healthy parents. So yes, babies need sleep. They need a certain amount of sleep per day. They need consistency. But really, when it comes down to it, we don't know what these kind of sleep training, cry it out, what the effects are on babies. What we do know is that happy, healthy parents tend to raise happy, healthy babies. Um, Everybody deals with sleep deprivation differently. I have worked overnights with families for many, many years. I've now switched to days, but I had a very long time in my life where I really didn't need that much sleep. I was fine as a mom, with kids that didn't sleep very much. I'm a low sleep needs person. That kind of changed, once I hit 40 and I listen to my body and I need more sleep now. And so I'm not able to support families overnight anymore. Um, and if it's not a problem for you, it's not a problem. So I think a lot of these problems with sleep are created where people are saying, well, somebody told me that I should be doing this or my baby's not sleeping enough. Um, they probably are. It is probably fine. If your baby is most of the time cheerful, happy, content, they're most likely getting enough sleep. So look to your baby sometimes and not to those numbers. Um, so the 4 month sleep regression is probably something that um, you have been told about by somebody that has a baby a little bit older than you. Maybe you've read about it, heard about it. Um, in my experience, this tends to be very built up with families where they are like gearing up for it from sometimes 2 months, and then sometimes it's not that bad. And so it's almost like the anticipation of this is worse than the actual regression. We call it a regression. It's actually a brain development. So at this point, your baby is producing melatonin. Babies start to produce melatonin in the evening between 8 and 12 weeks. That kind of ramps up gradually. They have their circadian rhythms in place. And what this brain development is, a lot of changes happen during this time, but one of the big ones is that babies start sleeping like adults. So they sleep in cycles just like we do. So all of us, all through the night, as adults, our sleep cycles are about 90 minutes. We're waking up every 90 minutes. Most of the time, we don't remember waking up because We very briefly wake up. We do a little check. Am I hot? Am I cold? Do I need water? Do I need to go to the bathroom? Is my arm asleep? And then we're able to go right back into sleep. Babies start sleeping like this, and their sleep cycles are a little bit shorter. They're closer to 45 to 60 minutes. And so, what happens during this regression is if you have a baby that is being nursed or rocked or given a pacifier every time that they go to sleep, and then eased down into their sleep space already asleep, they start waking up after a sleep cycle. And I think of it as like if you go to sleep in your bed and you wake up in your kitchen, you're going to be like, what happened? Now my cortisol is spiking because I don't know what's going on and I have adrenaline and now I can't go back to sleep even if I get back into my bed. So the kind of crux of every sleep training plan on the market, including what I teach families, is that teaching a baby to fall asleep on their own is the key to having a good sleeper, and especially the key to getting through this 4-month period of a brain development. So if you're starting around 8 weeks, you do a little bedtime routine, you lay your baby down, you have a calm space set up, you've kind of like wound down for the night, you're not going from like bright lights, bright TV, right into the bedroom. You've done a little routine. You can then teach them, you lay them down awake, and teach them to fall asleep. And a lot of times that looks like sitting next to their bassinet or their crib, patting their chest, shushing, telling them it's sleep time. Sometimes I like just a very firm hand. A lot of babies tend to like that. And it's very variable with each baby, what they need and want to be able to fall asleep on their own. But that is kind of, if you do nothing else in a sleep training plan, you need to be able to teach them to fall asleep on their own. So, what is sleep training? That is what sleep training is. It's teaching baby to fall asleep on their own and then go back to sleep after each sleep cycle. So they're actually not sleeping through the night. They're waking up, they're saying, I'm in my sleep space, I'm fine, I'm comfortable, I don't have a wet diaper, I'm not hungry. I'm going to go right into my next sleep cycle. So when you have a baby in your room, you may hear them doing that. And a lot of parents think the baby's awake. So they tend to get the baby up after that sleep cycle. So that's where some issues can arise. If you're able to teach your baby to go back to sleep, you are going to probably hear something, and then it's important to kind of wait it out and say, okay, let's give it a second, see if they can settle, go back to sleep. Sleep training is kind of this spectrum. So over here, you have like your gentle sleep training that may include co-sleeping. It's a lot of the no cry, gentle sleep training that you're going to come across. And then over here, you have like extinction crying. So lay the baby down, close the door, don't go back in. And there are not a lot of people that are doing that anymore, but I still do hear about a few families using that method. Like I said, we don't really know if crying has long-term effects. I have a lot of families ask me that. It's something that's very hard to study. So I can't tell you definitively one way or the other. But what we do know is that sleep-deprived, unhealthy parents those babies do have a long-term effect. So a lot of the gentle sleep training that you're going to come across, it does involve some crying. And it's a lot of the crying at bedtime where you're helping your baby fall asleep on their own in their own sleep space. And then you may have to kind of replicate that in the middle of the night. And so trying to find a no cry is difficult. I have a lot of families that are able to do it. They are really not sleep training. They're responding to the baby's needs until the baby outgrows the need. And that's another way to do it. And that does not work for everyone. Those are typically babies that are easier sleepers anyway, and are able to just kind of coast through that period a little bit easier. So there's a lot of books, websites, programs, things on Instagram. This has become a big business, helping families get their babies to sleep. This is a big issue for parents, and so people know that at this point. A lot of these books and programs are the same. They're teaching you to help your baby fall asleep on their own at bedtime and when they wake up after a sleep cycle. Most of them that I have seen have a very long steps that you have to follow. And if you don't follow them in order, it's not going to work. No, you can rearrange the steps, you can take out steps, you can do what works for you as long as you are helping the baby to fall asleep in their own sleep space. The big one that I can think of that most moms are familiar with is taking care of babies. To me, that her whole thing is very long in the middle of the night. I did it when I worked overnight families. I had families that would ask me to do that with babies. And I would have to like get out my phone or an iPad and read because I could not remember the order of the things that I was supposed to do. I feel like this needs to be a little bit more simple if you're able to be consistent and help it to work. So I recommend sitting down with your partner, talking about once this becomes an issue. If this is not an issue for you, I wouldn't even talk about it yet because you just don't know how things are going to go. So if you have a baby that's sleeping well, I wouldn't worry about it yet. But if you have a baby that's not sleeping well and you are going back to work or you know that you really need to do something differently, sit down and have a conversation when you're both awake. A lot of families make these decisions at 3 in the morning and they're like, okay, we're going to start sleep training like right now because I can't do this anymore. And then they do something from 3 in the morning till it's time to wake up. And then they get up and they're like, I don't know if that worked. It wasn't great. You want to really be more intentional than that, where you're sitting together at a time when you're both somewhat awake and saying, what's working, what's not working, what are our goals? What do we know about our baby? What do we know that's definitely not going to work with our baby? What is something that we feel completely uncomfortable with that's not even on the table? And then how can we split the nights up? So how can we make this manageable for both of us? I will say that once you start a sleep training plan, typically the first 2 to 5 nights are rough, and then it gets a little bit easier after that. So I would say just split up those first 2 nights to start. Whether you guys do every other night or somebody's on from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. and then somebody's on from 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. If you don't feel ready for full-on sleep training, I just worked with a family. I was their doula in person, and then they came to me for sleep training when the baby was 4 months, and this was a very low sleep needs baby. And the dad suffered from severe, severe insomnia, and he did not want his baby to have the same issues. And so he was very worried about the amount of hours of sleep that this baby was getting. But the overall sleep was pretty good. The baby was waking up at 4 a.m. and they were happy to kind of get up and snuggle with the baby at that time and then let him fall back asleep. Like they weren't really feeling that bad about it. And then they came to me maybe 3 or 4 weeks later and they were like, now he's getting up every sleep cycle. What do we do? We started a plan. They had already been doing a bedtime routine. They really committed to getting the baby to sleep in his bassinet, and he started sleeping great within the first like 2 or 3 nights. So if you're not ready yet, you're not ready yet, and then you can readdress it in a week or a month or a time frame that you and your partner decide on. So we talked a little bit about a bedtime routine. I don't know how old um, everybody's baby is here, but I say it's good to begin around 8 weeks. If you have a baby that's older than 8 weeks and you're not doing a bedtime routine, it is okay. You can start one tonight if you want to. This can be very simple. You're just getting the stage set for sleep. Changing baby into a diaper, fresh pajamas, read a book or sing a song. I would say at the beginning, start with doing the same song or the same book every night so that baby's brain starts to go, okay, every time I hear these words or we sing this song, I know that it's kind of time to transition to the longer period of nighttime sleep. And then whatever sleep sack swaddle that you use, and then rock the baby for a few minutes and lay them down awake. So, a couple things about this. If you're going to do a feeding with your bedtime routine, which most people do, and I do recommend, do it at the beginning of the bedtime routine. So, feed the baby and then give them any upright time burping that they need, change them into fresh diaper PJs, and then go through your whole routine. If you are just starting this and you have a baby that's breastfeeding to sleep, you might have to do another little snack at the end while you transition. Um, that kind of tends to happen with breastfed babies. And then I wanted to touch on the drowsy but awake thing. This is a big thing, and I just had a mom ask me about this in another sleep group. Really, the awake part of that is the important part of it. Ideally, yeah, you'd love them to be drowsy, but if you feed and you know that they're tired and you go through your whole bedtime routine and they seem wide awake, go ahead and put them down anyway. Um, so if you have a baby that's older than, or sorry, younger than 4 months, typically their bedtime's gonna be later. It's gonna be more like when you go to bed, like around 10 o'clock. So you can go ahead and start doing this routine around that time. And then around 4 months, but sometimes later, like closer to 6 months, this starts to move earlier. And then you have a baby that's going to bed like at usually around 7 o'clock. And then the 12-hour night becomes 7 to 7. So as many times as the baby's waking up in between those 12 hours that you have determined with your family, it's sleep time. So you're not getting up at 4 a.m. if the baby's wide awake. You're not getting up and getting out toys and like, okay, I guess we're up for the day. You're keeping the stage set for sleep. You're responding to your baby. You're picking them up and laying them back down and changing diapers and feeding, but you're keeping it nighttime. And then setting the stage for sleep. So you do your whole routine. Um, no matter what you're doing in terms of sleep training, no matter what time that is at night, your room is dark or your baby's room is dark if you've already moved them into their own space. If you need a light for feeding or for diaper changing, I like a red light bulb, or you can, on your iPhone, you can get an app that has a red light, and that is much better than like a white light or a yellow light. It just helps baby kind of keep in that sleep mode. A lot of families use a sound machine. You don't have to, but I do find that they help babies to learn to fall asleep, especially at the beginning as you're kind of implementing all of this. Um, Keep your feedings and your diaper changes dark, quiet, and boring. Yes, during the day when you're feeding, you want to make eye contact and talk to your baby and show them things around the house and um, really be engaged with them. At night, it's quiet, soothing voices. Just more quiet overall. You're not narrating the whole experience for them like you would during the day. Um, if you just have a wet diaper and it's not super, super wet and going to leak through their pajamas, you do not need to change it. And you're just like overall doing less, keeping baby in that sleep mode. Um, and then swaddling. So, if I think, as you probably all know, if your baby's starting to show signs of rolling, then you kind of need to move into a transitional sleeper, or I recommend if you're using something like a halo swaddle, you can take one arm out and then help them transition. It is a lot easier to transition baby to having arms out gradually. So do one arm out for a few nights and then both arms out. So I do have families that like the baby rolls over and they're like, okay, now we have to do this whole transition all at once and it happens, but it is easier if you can do it gradually. So if you notice your baby starting to roll, I would maybe start some sort of transitional swaddle. And then listen to your baby. So this is another one where this is not one size fits all. You know the difference between your baby fussing and crying. So if the baby wakes up in the middle of the night, you know that it's probably not time for a feeding, and you can hear they're not really that upset, they're making some noises, you can give them a minute. If you're like, I know this isn't going to stop, I know this is going to ramp up to screaming and I need to intervene, then you can go ahead and intervene and help pat their chest and shush them and help them to fall asleep. And then at bedtime, if you lay them down and they're not really, really upset and they're fussing, just give them a couple minutes, see if they'll settle. If your baby's wide awake and not crying, either in the middle of the night or at bedtime, just leave them in their sleep space. You're communicating that it's sleep time. You cannot force them to sleep. So you've done everything you can. You've set the stage for healthy sleep. Let them kick their legs, babble to themselves, whatever they need to do to maybe wind down into sleep. And then I'll touch on naps a little bit. So you can do a nap time routine. That's a shortened version of your bedtime routine. Naps and nighttime sleep are controlled by different parts of the brain. So if you're doing some kind of sleep training protocol at night, but you're still contact napping during the day, totally fine. That's not going to mess anything up. If you want to have babies sleep in their same space as nighttime sleep and you're kind of trying to transition, I would start with the first nap of the day. And then, the rest of the naps of the day, give yourself a break. They can nap in the stroller, in the car seat, contact naps, whatever works for you. If you have a terrible nap in the crib, or the bassinet, I would make sure that the next one is doing whatever works best for that baby. So go for a drive or hold them for a contact nap, whatever you need to do to kind of reset and not have an overtired baby by the end of the day. And then with naps, really until like 6 to 9 months, you're not going to have a nap schedule. You're going to have more of a rhythm where you're following the awake windows for your baby. And depending on their age, that will be a different period of time. And I say follow that time, but also watch your baby. So if they're tired sooner, or if you get to that number and they're not quite ready for sleep, you can give them another 10 minutes. It's not always going to be the exact same amount of time. So watch the clock and your baby simultaneously for naps. Um, and that was a lot. So I would love to open it up for questions. And I can stop sharing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Courtney.
You're
That was
welcome.
great. It does look like we have one question in the chat from Erin. She's asking, does putting baby down awake work the same for naps?
So yes, but again, I think naps are hard because when you're trying to commit to a nighttime sleep routine, you can take 30 to 45 minutes to get the baby down awake and help them like be able to fall asleep, and it might take a while. Whereas naps, sometimes you're spending the whole nap doing that. So again, I would try for it for your first nap of the day. That's always going to be the easiest time to try something new is early in the day. And then if it doesn't go well, then let yourself kind of do whatever you need to do to get baby good sleep for the rest of the day. If it goes well, then try it for the next nap.
Awesome. It looks like you have another question. Can you see that, Courtney, from Sammy?
Nighttime has been amazing, but naps are our biggest struggle. Anything to help with them and not have them be so overtired. Um, yeah, so this is a kind of a big one, and I think a lot of people have this experience, but they also don't want to talk about it because people that aren't doing well at night are like, I don't want to hear it. Um, so again, like I would say, you do what works. And I don't know, Sammy, how old is your baby? If you want to type it, or you can unmute. 5 months. Okay. Yeah, so I would say for a 5-month-old, you're kind of replicating your bedtime routine as much as you can during the day. And if that ends in maybe you lay them down, they get 30 minutes, you can finish that with a contact nap, um, so that you can kind of link and get them a better amount of sleep so that they're not overtired. You can also lengthen the wake windows a little bit. Your baby just might not be quite ready to go down to sleep. And then the other thing is same thing, like if you notice that baby's getting really, really overtired and you have something that works, just do what works and get a good long nap and reset and then try again. I think we have, okay, let's see.
Yeah, it looks like there's a couple more.
Yes, Chelsea said her baby's 4 months old. They are doing everything we've talked about. And he's having trouble connecting more than one sleep cycle during the day. Nighttime, he goes 3 hour stretches, which is great. Um, so I would say, Chelsea, so I'll do nights first. I would set a time. Um, so you kind of know your nursing schedule, but typically it's like 1 a.m. So if he's waking up before 1 a.m., you're trying everything to get him to go back to sleep, same thing that you did at bedtime, without nursing. And then after that point, you can go ahead and nurse, and then you can push that time out gradually. I think probably some of this is him just getting used to being used to nursing every 3 hours at night. Even though he probably doesn't need it, he just wants that kind of comfort sucking. So I would say maybe for the first 3 hour stretch and maybe even the second one, you're helping him to go back to sleep without milk. And then for naps, again, same thing as Sammy. I would go ahead and do the nap time routine, lay him down, and then if he's waking up after like 30 to 45 minutes, extend the nap with a contact nap so that he kind of learns he's getting longer sleep, but also is still learning to sleep in his crib. Okay, then. Yeah, Jess has a good question. How long should you allow the baby to settle and cry after putting him down at night? So I would say without any intervention, I approach sleep pretty gently with families, and my max is like 10 to 15 minutes. One thing that you can do is you can take a voice memo on your phone and you'll see, like, I don't know if you've ever taken a voice memo, but you'll see it kind of like cycling. And if you take a voice memo for 2 or 3 minutes and you see that like cycle going up and down, that means your baby's starting to settle down. Like they're ramping it up, they're crying for you, but then they are like, oh, maybe this isn't terrible. Like I am kind of tired. I could go to sleep. If they're like full on upset, then I would go ahead and pick them up after 5 to 10 minutes. If they're like really, really upset, 10 to 15 if they're not like at a 10. Um, Pick them up, help them to settle down, and then lay them back down again. And you may have to do that multiple times to help them kind of learn to sleep in that space. So then at nighttime with breastfed babies, how long would a baby or when would a baby sleep more than 3 hours at a time? Yeah, good question. So typically this and this is really, really variable for every baby. I start to see those longer stretches kind of funny, like right before the 4 month sleep regression time, and then they kind of go away. So I think between 4 and 6 months, you should probably be able to get a longer stretch from bedtime until the first feeding of the night, like 5 or 6 hours. Unfortunately, that looks kind of like 7 p.m. to midnight or 1 for a lot of families. So it's not going to be necessarily like a nice long 5 to 6 hour stretch of sleep for you. But that first stretch of the night, typically you'll see that just get longer and longer and longer. And then once the baby eats, they'll go back to like every 3 hours. So if you kind of start to stretch that first stretch, that one will just keep getting longer, if that makes sense. And I would also recommend until your baby's like fully going all night long without milk, still continue to feed every 2.5 to 3 hours during the day so that you know that they're getting enough calories. And then my 12-week-old falls asleep great in the crib for naps, but she only naps 29 to 40 minutes each time. Yeah, so that's pretty normal for that age and for beyond. So that is once the sleep regression happens, that is a sleep cycle. So again, if you know that she is still tired, you can go ahead and finish with a contact nap, stroller nap. Usually it's a contact nap, but I do have families that will finish with a stroller nap or a car nap, sometimes out of necessity, especially if you have older kids. Um, and I was going to say something else about that too. But yes, it is normal to answer your question. Uh, yes, of course, right before the regression. My baby's 4 months old and his room shared and it's growing out of the bassinet and needs to move to the crib. First nap of the day happens in the crib. When should baby move to the crib for all sleep? You've already gone through the 4 month regression. Great. So this is a tricky one. So the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 6 months in your room. Most babies outgrow their bassinet before they get to 6 months. And a lot of families here in the Denver area, especially in our older homes, cannot fit a full-size crib in their master bedroom. So I think as soon as your baby is ready to leave the bassinet and leave your room, I would keep them in there for as long as you can. But if they're outgrown and you can't fit a crib in your room, then I would go ahead and move them. I would do exactly what you're doing. So doing the naps in the crib first, and then start moving to crib for nighttime sleep. A lot of families also will do the crib for the first part of the night at bedtime and then until the first feed of the night, and then they'll move the baby back into the bassinet as kind of a transition.